So, final section with Samson today, chapter 16, 31 verses. We're going to go through the three sections that we've got. How's it going?
Yo.
Section 1 is 3 verses, Samson and the gates, verses 1 through 3. So we're just going to fire this off, jump through. It is 31, so I'm going to try and fire through fast, but if you have questions, put your hands up. So verse 1. So then went Samson to Gaza, and saw there an harlot, and went in unto her. And it was told the Gazites, saying, Samson is come hither. And he compassed him in, and laid wait for him all night in the gate of the city. And were quiet all the night, saying, in the morning, when it is day, we shall kill him. And Samson lay till midnight, and arose at midnight, and took the doors of the gates of the city, and the 2 posts, and went away with them, bar and all, put them upon his shoulders, and carried them up to the top of a hill that is before Hebron. Okay, so if we remember last chapter, what's just happened, we had Samson killing 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of a donkey. He got very thirsty, he cried out to God. God provided the water needed, right? And then so we go from the point of him crying out to God saying, hey God help, to immediately him going to his next place in Gaza, falling in love again with another lady or lusting after her and deciding to sleep with her. So it's gone from like him doing stupid stuff, wise stuff, stupid stuff, wise stuff, and now again, he's cried out to God, which is a wise thing to do, but then he immediately turns to sleep with a prostitute, a harlot, okay? Let's have a little look at this map. You guys can hopefully see that quite clearly. But Samson's moved from Enkakor and went to Gaza, okay? So we have Gaza right here. His whole story started over here, where he saw the Philistine woman in the vineyard and went from there with a lion and everything like that. Came down here, killed the 30 Philistines, took their clothes, went back, paid off the riddle fee, right? Everyone remember that? Now we have him in Gaza. He's wandered all the way down here. He's taken the city gates, right? And we can see 40 miles. He's carried these city gates on his shoulders for 40 miles, all the way up to the top of the hill near Hebron, okay? Pretty epic, okay? So, we can see that. We can see all the way from E-Town all the way to Gaza. Long journey. When he arrives to Gaza, he sees this woman, a harlot, a prostitute. We know this means prostitute. We can read that he went into her, so he slept with her. You may be wondering what happened between chapter 15 and chapter 16 when we had Samson crying out to God saying, I need water. I'm thirsty, please save me. And instantly then turning to his lust and falling into sin. This helps us be reminded once again that Samson is far from perfect, okay? This is a clear example of how a man can be used of God, but can also fall into sin and blatantly so. Everyone got that? Everyone good? Verse 2, people of Gaza find out that Samson was there. How did they find out he was there?
Because he's popular.
Yeah. He's popular. People know him, right? People have been trying to kill him and fight him, and he's probably been well known now, right? He just killed 1,000 Philistines. It's pretty hard to kind of hide from that kind of fame.
The word is out.
The word is out, right? It's gone around. So they gathered around together, middle of the night, in the gates of the city, plotting that in the morning we will kill Samson. But verse 3, Samson wakes up. He's laying there, gets to midnight, he wakes up. And Samson, despite his sin, we can read that God still gave Samson this supernatural strength that he has, right? To be able to lift the doors of the gates of the city and the 2 posts and just whoof over his shoulders and just go. It's kind of epic, right? God again using Samson for God's plan, not Samson's plan. God used Samson despite Samson's sin, not because of it, which I think is really incredible to think about that, okay? And we can see again on this map that he took these posts 40 miles over country to Hebron, okay? Which gets us to section 2, which is funny because it's kind of like he sins, God gives him the supernatural strength, he does this incredibly heroic thing, and moves these gates. What did gates do for a city, by the way? Can you remember?
Entrance.
The entrance, the exit, the security. Was it?
Protection.
Yeah, protection. If you entered through the gates, you were meant to be secured. He just took the gates. He just took the gates. So what just happened to your city? People could just wander in and out now, right? You can't secure it anymore. That's a big problem for them. That's a big problem for Gaza. So think about that. Just as he's walking off of your gates over the distance, what are you going to do about that, okay? Section 2, verses 4 through 22, Samson and Delilah. Okay. And it came to pass afterwards that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came unto her, said unto her, entice him, and see wherein his great strength lieth, and by what means we may prevail against him, that we may bind him to afflict him. And we will give thee every one of us 1,100 pieces of silver. And Delilah said to Samson, tell me, I pray thee, wherein thy great strength lieth, and wherewith thou mightest be bound to afflict thee. And Samson said unto her, if they bind me with 7 green whiffs that were never dried, then shall I be weak and be as another man. Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 green whips which had not been dried, and she bound him with her. Now there were men lying in wait, abiding with her in the chamber. And she said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he brake the whiffs as a thread of tow is broken when it toucheth the fire. So his strength was not known. And Delilah said unto Samson, behold, thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Now tell me, I pray thee, wherewith thou mightest be bound. And he said unto her, if they bind me fast with new ropes that were never occupied, then shall I be weak and be as another man. Delilah therefore took new ropes, and bound him therewith, and said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And there were liars in wait abiding in the chamber. And he brake them from off his arms like a thread. Delilah said unto Samson, hitherto thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Tell me wherewith thou mightest be. And he said unto her, if thou weavest the 7 locks of my head with the web. And she fastened it with a pin, and said unto him, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he awaked out of his sleep, and went away with the pin of the beam and with the web. And she said unto him, how canst thou say I love thee, when thine heart is not with me? Thou hast mocked me these 3 times, and hast not told me wherein thy great strength lieth. And it came to pass, when she pressed him daily with her words and urged him, so that his soul was vexed unto death, that she told her all his heart, and said unto her, thou have not come a razor upon thine head, for I have been a Nazarite unto God from my mother's womb. If I be shaven, then my strength will go from me, and I shall become weak and be like another man. And when Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, come up this once, for he hath showed me all his heart. Then the lords of the Philistines came up unto her, brought money in their hand, and she made them sleep upon her knees. And she called for a man, and caused him to shave off the 7 locks of his head. And she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. And she said, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he awoke out of his sleep, and said, I will go out as other times before, and shake myself. And he wist not that the Lord was departed from him. But the Philistines took him, put out his eyes, brought him down to Gaza, and bound him with fetters of brass. And he did grind in the prison house. Verse 22, howbeit the hair of his head began to grow again after he was shaven. Okay, big part, big chapter, big section, sorry. So, manipulation's a big deal, right? We know this. Manipulation's a big deal. We're going to see this again happening to Samson with Delilah, okay? It's happened before with a different wife. Now it's happening again. He's kind of falling for the same tricks. So Samson, after leaving Gaza, after taking some city gates along with him, falls in love with another woman. And this was an affectionate love. You know, the love that's mentioned here isn't just like a friendship love. This is a romantic, they slept together love. So this is another lusting after this woman, okay? And in the valley of Sorek, this woman's name was Delilah. Again, it's kind of showing you a place. It's giving you details. The Bible does well with this, okay? But he fell in love again. Fell for a woman once again who was completely wrong for him. He's choosing the wrong people, right? Another example of the pain and the ruin that comes into Samson's life because he did not guard his heart. We've said this a fair few times. Scott mentioned it a couple times. I've mentioned it a couple times now about guarding your heart when you come to these type of things. Samson does not do this well. And we see that almost immediately he's fallen in love with this woman. He's had relations with this woman, and she is very quick to turn around and say, actually, I'm going to get something out of this relationship. the lords of the Philistines came to Delilah. The word Lord here means tyrant or tyrant king. So there are people who are just in charge of these areas, and these guys are these guys. So these ones here, the lords here. It's only assigned throughout the whole Bible. This exact word for lords is only assigned to the Philistine kings. Interesting, right? That like the way this is written, just for these guys. And that word is Seren, S-E-R-E-N, is for the tyrant kings. So they wanted to know where Samson gets his strength from. They want to beat him, they want to defeat him, they want to overpower him. How can we do that? Delilah, let us know, you know? They weren't even being subtle about it. We want to get him. But they did offer a great reward. 1,100 pieces of silver. What does it say? From each of them. They got 5. How much money are they going to get out of this? Quick math, come on, 5,500, let's go. Pieces of silver, right? If it goes well here, she's walking out rich, incredibly rich, okay? So there are 5 lords of the Philistines for the 5 areas. You've got Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, where he came down and he killed those 30 people, right? Gaza, where he stole the gates from. You got Gath. Can you remember who came from Gath? Goliath. And Ekron. Those are the 5 Philistine areas that you'd find, okay? You'd have a lord for each area. So, Delilah would be walking away with a ton of cash here. Like, absolutely rich for the rest of her life type of situation. Think about this, 1,100 shekels of silver makes up to approximately nowadays 140 pounds of silver. That's from one king. That's 5 of them. She'll be making bank, right? All she has to do is betray the person who loves her, right? That's fine. So we can see here, verse 6, that Delilah may have liked Samson, but she loved money. She loved money, okay? We can read that as soon as they offer this thing, that you're going to get this money from her, Delilah went to Samson and said, tell me, let's talk about it. I pray you tell me the truth. How'd you get your strength? Delilah asks this question, where does your strength lie? How can you be defeated? Because the source of Samson's strength wasn't obvious to her, okay? And it probably means that Samson wasn't this huge bulking guy. He wasn't this huge man. He wasn't like a muscle bodybuilder or anything like that. He was probably just your average Joe. But the fact that he could have his supernatural strength. That's the funny thing. You look at the Bible and you go on Google, type in Samson from the Bible and you click images. Everyone has him as this bulking guy. I'm like, no, clearly not. Because Delilah turns around and says, where's your strength from? He probably doesn't have all these muscles. But it's the fact that this question is not an obvious answer. She has to ask, where do you get it from? So it kind of gives you a clue about a little bit about his appearance. Okay? Verse 7, Samson responds that if they would bind me up with 7 green, what do they say here? Whips. That's kind of like vines, you know? Dried like straw all woven together into big ropes. Basically twigs that had never been dried out properly so they'd still have some good use to them, right? Then I'll be defeated. I'll be like every other man, I'll be weak. So she does that. She does it. She ties them up and says, okay, great. Maybe she joked about doing it. It'd be really funny if we just tried that out. Let's just see how that works. I don't know how she managed to do this, right? But she did it. And either way, Samson must have been questioning, or at least thinking about, why is she doing the thing I just told her that could do this, right? But the fact that he did not tell her the truth proves that he doesn't trust her. And probably knows that she has dangerous intentions. So either way, she ties him up with the thing that they've been asked to tie him up for, right? Okay. She then says this phrase. This phrase gets kind of frustrating after a while because you realize like she's just saying it to get a reaction from him. And I've had people and friends like this before that say something about you because they just want to wind you up. And so she says it. But the trick here is there are people waiting. She's already got people waiting to see if this will be successful. It says in verse 9, there were men waiting, lying in wait, abiding with her in the chamber for this to be successful. Okay? So the kings of the Philistines, The lords have brought up the things that they need to tie him up. She's tied him up. There are men waiting for this to be successful, to catch him, to hold him captive in case it happens. And the part of the house where they were waiting in is the most secret part of the house, right? They're right in the bit where they shouldn't really be, only the family should know about it, but they were waiting right in there. And she told Samson, hey, the Philistines are coming. Samson, the Philistines are upon you, to test if he could in fact break out the restraints. He did, right? He did, and his strength was not known. And then you get to verse 10. Now this is kind of funny, because verse 9, you've got her asking these questions. In verse 10, it jumps straight into another question about it. My question to you is, do you think there's been any time passed? Because if someone came up to me and was like, hey, let me tie you up with a piece of string and see if it holds you, and you're like, oh, okay, boom, ha 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 ha. Oh yeah, well, let me tie you up with this piece of string. Kind of looks a little bit suspicious, right? That's what makes me ask the question of do you think there's been time passed? Do you think it's been a couple of days, maybe a week or so, or what do you think, Grace? You don't know? It doesn't say anything like that. I'm just wondering because it's kind of either Samson is head over heels in love with this woman, so he's not going to question what she's doing, but he's not telling her the truth. It gets kind of confusing, right? So if someone was asking you over and over and over again, well, how can we get rid of your strength? How can I know your strength? How can I test your strength? That gets kind of obvious. So that's why I asked the question. So I just wanted to know your opinions on that. But Delilah said into Samson again, look, you mocked me before. You're mocking me, you're lying to me. Tell me the truth, please. I pray, what can bind you? And again, Samson's big fall that we've seen throughout his whole, the account of Samson throughout the book of Judges here, is romantic relationships. He falls head over heels in love with women. He does. And he falls hard, right? And I can imagine he's probably just, all right, I love you, I'll tell you. I'm making a little bit of game out of it, why not? I like this. And it shows how an ungodly relationship can truly warp our thinking and our understanding, and how it can control you. He shouldn't have been with that woman. And the fact that he didn't even tell her the truth tells you that he knew he shouldn't have been with her. If you can't tell the person that you're with the truth about stuff, if you can't open up, if you can't ask them to pray for you or to be with you in those tricky times, it's what are you doing with that person? Ask that question. Why are you with them, So, verse 11, Samson answers the question again. He said unto her, if they bind me fast with new ropes that have never been used for anything before, brand new, out of the pack, smelling ropes. Like tennis balls, when you take them out, you're like, oh, they smell like the brand new tennis balls. That's what I'm thinking with the rope here, okay? Brand spanking new, never been used before. So she does it. Verse 12, we have Delilah then took these new ropes. I can imagine, again, the lords of Philistines provided the ropes for her, just like they did back in verse 8. It doesn't say that, but I'm just imagining that's kind of what happened, because that was the pattern there, okay? So Delilah took the ropes, bound him therefore, tied him up real well. And then Samson, think about this the whole time. He's allowing this to happen. He's allowing it to happen. Right? He's kind of doing a Houdini thing right now. He's allowing someone to tie him up and he's like, I'll break out again. It's fine. I didn't tell you the truth. And he does. She's trying to find out how to lock him down, basically, and he's playing games. And again, Delilah, after he's all tied up, tells Samson this phrase again. The Philistines are upon you. And once again, Samson broke them off his arms like a piece of thread. Like they're just nothing. Verse 13, you kind of start to see a little bit more attitude, a little bit more frustration from Delilah here. She said, hitherto thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Again you've mocked, again you've lied, again you've done this, again you've done this. Where does your strength lie? Tell me. She really wants this money. Again, we worked it out. She'd be, how much money was it? Like 100? 200? Mm-hmm. 200,000.
200 grand.
She'd be done. She'd have to work for the rest of her life, right? Clearly she wants his money. But this is the third time. And this time Samson's answer notice this, Samson's answer is a little closer to the truth. Because what's happening here is he's being worn down. He's being worn down and worn down and worn down. And it's kind of like sometimes you get like little kids, sometimes I'll do this with my boys, and I'll be like, hey, there was 5 chocolate chip cookies in the cupboard, why is there only 4? Oh, I don't know, Dad, I didn't have a snack. And you go, oh, interesting, okay, well there's only 4 left and there was 5 earlier. Well, I don't know, Dad, I only had a banana. Hold on, that changed. You go, well, but it's still only 4 now. I'm just trying to work out where the other one went. Well, I don't know, Dad. I only had like a granola bar or something like that. You're slowly getting closer and closer and closer until you wear it down to the truth. And he's like, I ate it. I'm so sorry, And that's what usually happens. But this is happening here. And again, this is not a good relationship. This is not a good trait to have in a relationship. If you're being constantly badgered and pressured into telling you, 1, you shouldn't be lying, but 2, if you told the truth, it's the truth. You shouldn't have to keep repeating yourself, okay? But Samson's answer here, you can tell, is being worn down. This is a little closer to the truth, but it's still not the truth. He's still lying, There's this slow breaking down of Samson as Delilah keeps asking until he finally breaks. But this time he says, if you weave 7 locks of my hair into this web. What's a web? What are we thinking there? What do you think?
Mine says loom.
Loom? So what's a loom? You weave stuff on a loom, right? You make clothes or blankets. That's the old school one. It like stretches out the wool, and you better weave in and out and make those really cool patterns, some blankets and stuff. It would take ages to do it. But he's saying, if you weave my hair into that thing, I'll be just like as weak as everyone else. But notice now he's starting to get close to what the actual answer is here, okay? So, Delilah knows what she's doing with the loom. It's typically a woman's job, and she has one in her area. So she fastens down his hair, and it says, to the pin, which means she locks it down. What you'd do is you'd put a piece of wood this side and a piece of wood this side, and this side would be locked down so it would stay, and then it would be stretched. So he's done that to Samson's hair, locked it in, and pinned it down, and then locked it all down this side. So it's going to be tough to get out, okay? And his hair's stretched through here now. And it's hilarious to think about this situation, because it's kind of like, it made me laugh when I thought about like what it might have looked like. But she says that the Philistines are upon you. And he woke up and he just walks out. Oh, where are they? I'll get them. Oh! And he's dragging all this weaving equipment and the loom and the web and the big beam that he's attached to, all with him. Just taking it with him. I just kind of think that looks kind of funny, but all the equipment goes with him because he's just that strong. And this is the part that kind of hurts, right? Because of the lies, because of the manipulation, because of this ungodly relationship, you get to this point in verse 15, and she says, how can you say I love you? How can you say that you love me when your heart's not with me? She challenges Samson's love for her. If you're a guy and you've fallen head over heels in love with a girl, or a girl that's head over heels in love with a guy, and your partner turns around to you and says, I doubt you even love me. That is like manipulation at the finest right there. That's like pull on the heartstrings, like disgusting motives kind of thing of like, you're not willing to do whatever I want. I don't think you love me. That's craziness. Again, unhealthy relationship. But she says, how can you say that I love you when your heart's not with me? And that wasn't the truth. Samson's heart was with her, and that was to his own detriment. That was his weakness, remember. But this accusation is a manipulative one. In verse 16, you can see this. It came to pass she pressed him daily with her words and urged him, so that his soul was vexed unto death. The same request over and over and over and over and over until he just was like, oh my goodness. We can see that this happened before, Judges 14, 15 to 18, that this is something that Samson has had done to him before also, okay, with his other wife. And then finally, he breaks. He breaks in verse 17. Samson tells her the truth. I've been a Nazirite from birth, never had my hair cut. She was probably pretty shocked by that, by the way, the fact that he's sleeping with her and they're not married and he's been doing all this crazy stuff. And she's like, You're a Nazarite? Huh, wouldn't have known. Kind of like what people happen nowadays when you're like, oh, I'm a Christian. And you're like, yeah, great. You done sleeping around and drinking and doing whatever you want? Oh, do you read the Bible often? What's a Bible? Didn't you just say you're a Christian? You know, it's what people do. So I would imagine there was probably maybe a little shock. Maybe not, who knows? But he tells her, I'm an Nazarite. I have not shaved my hair since that time. And if I am shaved, I lose my strength. Now, question for you. Is his hair the source of strength? What's his hair? What's the significance here? Why is his hair the issue or the thing? Why is it? Any answers? Go for it, Josh.
I think with like the Garden of Eden, like with the fruit, it's kind of like a responsibility type thing he has to keep, and then he didn't kept it, and then when he lost it, he loses everything, just like Adam and Eve, I guess.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
kind of like an object that like represents your like.
Yeah.
Like I don't know the word, like responsibility and like respect for like something God told you to do.
So it's something that God's told him to do.
Yeah.
Someone like. So what happens? Can you remember what we talked about when I'm going a little bit off track here, but it's good. When a Nazarite touches a dead thing, what was meant to happen? Can you remember? He's meant to get his hair buzzed off. So we'd look back at the Levitical law and we'd look at all the cleansing that needed to happen. And he would have to go by that law because he's been declared a Nazarite, which is kind of like a vow to God. I promise to follow you. I promise to be yours. I promise to represent you. I promise to look to you. And then in all these different situations are popping up, and every single time people are like, you're a Nazarite? You don't act like a Nazarite. But this is the one where he's saying, actually, it's my hair. That's the one thing he hasn't broken. Think about that. He was walking through vineyards where there are grapes and there's wine and all that stuff, and it's like, don't eat anything from the vine. Don't be drinking wine. He's like, okay, well, I didn't do it, but he was like stepping real close. There was like, don't be, he like threw parties with people where there's tons of drinking. Then he goes and puts his hand inside of a dead lion and eats from that dead lion, you know, breaking the rules there. Like, Samson's done everything, but when you think about his hair, he never really did anything wrong with that. That's the one part he didn't do. Everything else is kind of questionable, right? But he tells her, if I shave my hair, I lose my strength. Because it was the relation to God as a Nazarite. It was part of that there. So we see here the strongest man in the world, okay, in the world under the power of an ungodly relationship. Strongest man in the world being stuck under the thumb, as they would say nowadays, right? He may have strong muscles, but he did not have a strong heart or morals in this area. It's not all about looks. In verse 18, she gets all excited when she finally realizes, hey, this is the truth. This is the truth. And she calls for the Lord of the Philistines, come up here now. Get up here now. He told me the truth. I want my money. I want this done so I get paid. Woo-hoo! It's going to be good. Payday. Got the information you need. So verse 19, Delilah paid the manipulation cards. She, pleaded and begged and talked and said every single day until he gave in. And now she has the information. She sends for the Philistine lords. She comes back in and she's like, oh, honey, come over here and fall asleep in my lap again. It'll be fine. She's probably stroking his head or anything. He falls asleep. And he calls in the man to shave off the hair. But this isn't just a man. The word for that man right there is champion. Strong guy. Someone who needs to be able to handle themselves. It's not just a slave on the side. It was a person of recognition to come in and do the job. Why?
In case it didn't work.
What's that?
In case it didn't work.
In case it didn't work. They needed someone to be there just in case. So she calls in this champion of a guy to shave the hair off, and as it fell off, so did all of Samson's strength. And then we can read verse 19 at the end. This is the sad part. Obviously, she's begged and begged and begged. He told her the truth. Verse 19 at the end, she began to afflict him, torment him. Maybe make fun of him, maybe poke fun at him, whatever it is. She afflicted him there as this happened. And then Delilah, the phrase again in verse 20, Philistines be upon me. Samson arose as he did before, and he said, I'll go outside, I'll just shake off these binds, the things that bind me. And then he realizes that he can't. But he's going out there without the knowledge that anything's different. You know, he doesn't know that things are different now, but it must have been humiliating. Right? He stands up and he walks out, he's like, this will be fun. No. Hold on a second. Whoa, what happened? You know? This is an example here of tragic, wasted potential and rejection of God's warnings. You cannot simply get away with sin and escape its consequences. There will be repercussions. It will come back to bite you. And the Philistines in verse 21, they grabbed Samson, they took him, they took out his eyes. So the word there that took out his eyes is 3 different meanings here. One is they gouged them out. Pretty aggressive, right? Okay. Second one is that they get bore out, so you just stab and out they come. Third one is they get hot iron put into the center. How's it going?
Why are they doing this? They already did what they wanted to do.
Why wouldn't they do it? He's the biggest enemy that they've got. You know, they finally got him. He just killed 1,000 plus the 30 before. You know, so like he's the biggest name on their hit list right now. And they finally have him, and they've been waiting and waiting for this opportunity. So it's funny to think about it, but it's like this is their way of being like revenge. In an even weirder way, they're getting rid of Samson's biggest weakness, his eyes. That's what made him fall into sin. The fact that he lusted so much after women. How easy would his life have been if he was blind? He would never have really sinned that much. Obviously, he would have probably still sinned in a different way, but his main weakness was falling in love with women. So they take him, and they bore out his eyes, or they gouged out his eyes, or they burnt out his eyes so he cannot see anymore. And they take him all the way back to Gaza. And the Philistines would typically do this type of punishment to do with the rank of the person they're against. So this kind of answers your question of how highly they valued their target, was how bad the punishment would be, you know? They would either scoop out the eye, pierce the eye, destroy the eye with a red hot iron poker, but they also then took the precaution. He's already blind now. He's already weakened, but now they're taking the precaution of taking metal handcuffs, basically, and handcuffing those instead of just typical leather ones. So he's already imprisoned now. He's already taken, he's captive, he's now blinded, he hasn't got his strength anymore, and then they're putting these big chunky handcuffs on him and taking him home. Go for it.
It's almost like they're still scared of him.
Yep. Oh yeah. Sending in the champion to cut the hair, doing all these precautions just in case. They know his reputation, they know who he is, you know? But then there's this little bit of hope. It seems really sad. Seems really sad. And then you get this little bit of hope in verse 22 where it says, howbeit the hair of his head began to grow again after he was shaven. So Spurgeon, he's one of my favorite theologians, he wrote this whole sermon about this. And his whole point was, how funny is it that they didn't send a hairdresser in every day to shave this guy's head? They finally had the information that said, the hair's the thing, make sure he hasn't got hair. I would have been like, I don't care how long I'm in charge, but every single day that thing gets waxed. You ain't having hair on your head. You know, I'm sorry, but that's just what's going to happen. Because it's one of those things I'm like, you get rid of the strength of the guy. But they didn't. Maybe they thought it was like a one and done type of situation. As soon as you cut the hair, God doesn't care anymore. Who knows? But Spurgeon said it, and I laughed and I kind of agree. If I was the guy in charge, every single day that guy would be getting a haircut. Even if you can see hair, I'd be like, trim it, get rid of it, don't want it. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah? Like, is that a bit extreme or not? I don't know. I think it's good protection, but there you go. Okay, section 3, verses 23 through 31, the death of Samson. Okay, it says this, then the lords of the Philistines gathered them together for to offer a great sacrifice unto Dagon their god, and to rejoice, for they said, our God have delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hand. And when the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, our God have delivered into our hands our enemy, the destroyer of our country, which slew many of us. And it came to pass when their hearts were merry, that they said, call for Samson, that he may make us sport. And they called for Samson out of the prison house, and he made them sport, and they set him up between the two pillars. And Samson said unto the lad that held him by the hand, suffer me that I may feel the pillars whereupon the house standeth, that I may lean upon them. Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there. And there were upon the roof about 3,000 men and women that beheld while Samson made sport. And Samson called unto the Lord and said, O Lord God, remember me, I pray thee, and strengthen thee. I pray thee only this once, O God, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. And Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars, which upon which the house stood, and on which it was borne up, of the one with his right hand, and of the other with his left. And Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. And he bowed himself with all his might, and the house fell upon the lords, and upon all the people that were therein. So the dead which he slew in that day were more than they that which he slew in his life. Verse 31, then his brethren and all the house of his father came down and took him, and brought him up, and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol, in the burying place of Manoah his father, and he judged Israel 20 years. Okay, last week, verse 23, we don't know if you can remember the reference between Dagon, the sea god. He was like half man, half fish. That's the dude that they're like celebrating, saying, he was the guy. He's the guy that saved the day. He's the God that brought us all through. In your Bibles, it should say God with a lowercase g, because again, he's not a true God. He's a false God. But this was time for a great offering to their false god. They believed that Dagon was the reason that Samson was captured. They were giving glory to false gods, and Samson was transformed into some type of like weird trophy in regards for how good Dagon was as a god, right? People would walk past and they would cheer. Verse 24, they would praise Dagon every time they saw him, basically saying our God is stronger than your God. Our God is stronger than the God of Israel, because we have in fact conquered your person, your warrior, your judge, Samson. There was great tribute to Dagon because of this victory. In verse 25, this is kind of a sad part here as well. Samson becomes kind of a jester. They say, come and bring him in so he'll be make a sport. He becomes a jester of the courts, really. They mocked him, laughed at his captivity, and they had him sit up between 2 pillars. In verse 26, we can see how kind of weak they saw him now, how much of a joke it was because of this word. Samson said unto the lad that was guarding him. What does your Bible say? Verse 26.
Yeah, lad.
Lad? That's a young boy, right?
Yeah, mine says young man.
Young man.
Yeah.
What happens when, like, remember back before when we were looking through Judges, there was an opportunity for a young man to kill a king. And he said, I'm not on his same level. I can't kill him. So someone else stood up and just took the guy's head off, right? Young men back then weren't seen as important per se because they hadn't done much. They're having this young lad, bit of an insult to injury. This young man who has no experience in battle, no real experience in war, he's the one guarding Samson. So it's a bit more insulting than it would seem, right? But again, this helps us understand that Samson probably isn't this huge guy. The image that we have in our heads of like Hercules and muscles on top of muscles on top of muscles. No, you wouldn't have a young lad guarding that guy, right? You wouldn't have the smallest guy in the team guarding the biggest guy on the team, right? It would be in something equal at least. So again, it tells you that Samson probably wasn't this big, huge, hulking person. Verse 27, we can read about the house being full of men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there, so all the important people. And they're laughing, they're mocking Samson. And this area that these attendees were in would have been kind of like an elevated platform. It's a house type of situation. And it's kind of, they dug out and then it's got 2 pillars. They've stuck Samson between those 2 pillars. They're kind of laughing, going, ha, there he is, look at him. There's an elevated platform. There's about 3,000 people on the roof of that platform. That's a lot of people, right? Hope they got a good opportunity to kind of laugh and stuff, because in a second it kind of all goes downhill real fast for them, right? But first Samson calls upon the Lord again. Verse 28. Samson called upon the Lord. Lord, O Lord God, remember me. I pray thee and strengthen thee. I pray that only this once, O God, that I may be avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. That first part is real sad. Oh Lord God, remember me. Like he thinks God forgets. God never forgets. God knows us, never forgets us, is with us. That's one of the most important things that we could cling to. So the fact that Samson's saying, please remember me, how hopeless must he have felt? How alone in that time must he have felt? How defeated in this time must he have felt? Remember me. Remember me. Strengthen me, O Lord. One more time, give me your strength. Let me destroy these Philistines. Let me take them out. And he even says, let me die. Verse 30 tells him, let me die. Samson's end is bittersweet, really. It's real bittersweet. God answers his prayer. Samson achieves this great victory, but with the cost of his own life. In verse 29, it says he takes his right pillar and the left pillar, and he's got his hands and he leans on them. Just leans on them. Right? Verse 30, he said to God, let me die with these Philistines. And he bowed with all his might, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people that were there within. So the dead which he slew at his death were more than they which he slew in his life. In that moment, he killed 3,000 high-ranking Philistines. The men, the women, families were annihilated that day in that wreck, along with Samson. But Samson, even with this weird life, is considered a hero. How strange is that? He's considered a hero and is mentioned among the heroes of the faith. I mean, Scott, we're talking about this. It's kind of confusing sometimes when you're like, how are these guys mentioned in this heroes of faith in Hebrews 11:32? It tells you about Samson in the heroes of the faith. But one thing you need to notice here is there is no glorification of the sin that Samson does. There's no glorification of like, oh, look how great a king he is. He gets all the girls. No. Look how good of a king he is. He goes around and he kills everyone. No. The glorification there that happens is that God gives him strength. How he uses it is different. How he chooses to do things is his own way. The thing that actually is glorified is the Spirit of God being upon him in those times. He gets lifted up. How he lives may not have been the way that God intended. But we talk about free will. We've talked about this the whole time. You have a choice. Samson has a choice. He has a choice every single time he chose to fall in love again. Do I pursue that woman? Do I not? Do I kill the lion? Do I not? Do I scoop the honey? Do I not? Do I tell the truth? Do I not? Do I go and kill people for their clothes? Or do I not? Do I grab the jawbone of a dead animal? Shouldn't do that again, Nazarite. Or do I not? There's a lot of opportunities here. Falling in love time and time again. Should I do it or do it? Free will. There's a big case here of what happens, but what can happen if you trust God. When he cried out to God, when he trusted in God, God delivers. And even when it's for his death, strength came back, he pushed the pillars, the house came down, 3,000 people died, plus Samson. So Samson was a tragic kind of hero, whose life could have been completely different if there was more trust in God and obedience to his calling. Samson pushed with all his might, destroyed the platform, and all the dead were more than he had killed during his life. And in verse 31, all those from the house of Samson's father came and took his body, buried him. They buried him in the burying place of his father, and he judged for 20 years. And that's Samson. That's his account right there. We got 3 final thoughts. First one, who you are in relationships with matters. That's very clear to see with Samson, right? He chose the wrong ladies. They led him astray. They manipulated him. They chose to do things that he wasn't and shouldn't have been doing, but he did it because the girl looked real good. Remember back when he was chapter 15, when he saw the lady in the vineyard and he said, she pleases me a lot. She looked real good. I want her as my wife. He didn't know what was inside her heart. He didn't know who she was, but she looked real good. Who you are in a relationship with matters. Pray about it. Pray about your future partners today so that when you get to that point, you can be like, actually, I know you're right because I prayed for you. I prayed for you. Second one, do not glorify sin. Do not glorify sin. Your friends sin, don't make it a joke. Don't make it a fun thing. Sin is sin. That is a horrible, disgusting cancer that needs to be eliminated from your life. Do not make this thing that is just easy, happy, good for you, man. I'm sure it felt great doing whatever. No. We're called to be different. We're called to be followers of Christ. Do not glorify the sin. Do not lead with your heart. Talk to God. Guard your heart, right? Third thing again, this is the same point as last week. Times of need, call on the Lord. Because he delivers. The thing you can take from this about the account of Samson is that every time he turned to God, God was there. God does not forget. God comes through. God fulfills. Times of trouble, call on God. Guys, that's Judges 16.